share with you some architectural thoughts and medicine. In my slides, basically, I'll talk about architecture, but in the background, I will leave some thoughts for the medical people. The lecture is about columns, arches, bridges, and Islamic architecture. And if we just look to a few examples of some of the beautiful buildings in Islamic architecture, and I think you're all familiar with the Hamra Palace in Spain, and the Cordoba Mosque also, and some other mosques around the Arab countries, some in Persia, in India, and in the Ottoman Mosque in Turkey. And you can see the beautiful domes and columns. Most of the columns are made out of stones, covered with ceramics and some other items. And the arches also make a very predominant architectural feature in Islamic architecture. All kinds of arches, actually, the huge amount. Bridges are also known in Islamic architecture. And many architects, they built bridges before they built buildings, actually. This is the new, of course, the new steel architecture. Now we just go back to columns. And columns, sometimes they thought of them as people carrying buildings. It's not in Islamic architecture, of course, but it's a thought of what a column can be. And here are the types of columns. We have all types of columns. And the thing about columns that, as you can see, it's got a base and it tapers toward the upper part of the column. And the column actually, this is another type of columns. The parts of the column, in a column we have a base and we have a shaft or a trunk, and there is also a capital. This I don't know about it, anything, but I put it in the background for you to think about. And the part of the column, of course, you see, the thing is the column tapers at the top for many reasons. One of them, the Greeks defined it that when they taper it at the top, when you look at it, you will see it parallel. You will not see any deformation in the column. So it's for aesthetic reasons. But also, I think it's got some structural reasons that when a column bends or some moment applies at the top of the column, it will be less bending at the top. So I don't know what happens here, actually. The other thing is our columns, they're made out, of course, the Muslims also used this sort of columns, but I find this in another culture, but it gives me idea of what the column is made out. Our columns are made out of rings, you see, rings, and those rings are connected with wedges. I don't know, those rings, I don't know exactly what. And, and those rings, they connect with wedges here. You see this set of rings. Those rings make columns, actually, the store rings. And this is the load of the column. And when we load the column, we better have a vertical load, vertical to the cross-section of the column. It should be somewhere there, so we don't have any sort of, the load should be axial. If we have eccentric load, then we get moment of force and shear force at the top, which we don't like because it's going to cause some failure of the column. What happens when we have deformation and some of the forces that creates moment or shear, then we get this sort of cracks in the columns, you see. And of course, all these rings, something happens there like this, of course, it will happen. And the end, then we have to restore the column, we have to treat them in a way. And the treatments of the columns, we have cages of vertical bars and radial, some bars at the circumference of the column to protect it, to protect the parts, the rings, put it together, to put it back in a vertical position where the loads will be totally vertical to the column. I don't know, maybe. Arches. What an arch. Arches, we also got many types of arches. And this is one of the interesting arches, the four-centered arch. And the semicircular arch, segmental, elliptical, round arches. The thing about arches is that the forces, this is the OG arch. It goes like this. And it just happened that I put this together. I don't know what happens if we have it together. The thing about arches are also made out of stone rings, and there'll be a crown at the top which pressures the sides of the arch to the ends here to create forces perpendicular to the cross section again. So even in arches, we should have our forces here run. Should have the second slide. This is another part of arches. The making of the arch, yeah. The making of the arch, yes. The arch is made out of also parts, again. The thing is, yeah, the loading of the arch, again, the arch, the stone, each stone has to have this vertical force perpendicular to the cross section. Otherwise, this is the load distribution of the arch. Loads come all the way from the top, and then it has to go around, but it should go here in perpendicular fashion to this cross section. And if any force happens in the arch which doesn't keep the force line within these lines here, then we get collapses. And the same thing happens here, you know, each part of it will crash. And also we fix arches. And the way we fix arches, we make some steel bars on the walls, and then we hang the stones from the top, and then we just restore them, put them back in position. And we get these tools, of course, to work with. And I find these tools more interesting also. The bridges, of course, the bridge is the peak of columns and arches because it brings many things together. It brings the arch, it brings the column, and it has a continuous. A bridge actually is a continuous arch in the axial direction. And it also works like an arch. Of course, it's got an arch there, and the forces also distributes. The force distribution is also similar to an arch. And the way we fix them is the way we fix arches and so on. And sometimes we built ribs, actually, or trusses to support the platform of the arch, that without this thing cannot be positioned exactly in its place. And of course, in addition to the trusses and so forth, we have also some sort of smaller structural members that holds these arches together and the platform. And I thought maybe it has something to do with this. And I think, and thank you, and this is what all I have to say about architecture and new. And I thought that to bring this to the medical circle and to say that we do things, but I think you people do it better. Thank you.